We are on a mission to save and revitalize independent pharmacy. On the Catalyst podcast, we dive into current events that are shaping how pharmacists approach their patients and their businesses. Fuel your passion for pharmacy, one conversation at a time.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
Welcome to the Catalyst Pharmacy Podcast. I'm Mark Bivins, Vice President of Sales with Pioneer Rx, and I'm here today with Josh.
Hi, I'm Josh Howland, Vice President of Clinical Strategy at Pioneer Rx.
And today we're here with Scott Pace, an Arkansas-based pharmacist and lawyer, formerly CEO at the Arkansas Pharmacists Association, co-owner of Kavanaugh Pharmacy with his wife Ann, and currently a partner at Impact Management Group. With every guest, we usually try to kind of go, hey, what brought you to pharmacy? Right? What brought you into pharmacy? And you are not just a pharmacist, you're also a lawyer. So if you can, take us a little bit through the journey of, I don't know if it was pharmacy first or lawyer first. Kind of give us a little bit there.
Well, it was definitely pharmacist first. My pharmacy journey started literally my first day of college. Like a lot of people that are going into healthcare, I thought that I wanted to be a physician. And then I got to start in community pharmacy. I was a delivery driver for a little independent pharmacy in my hometown. And I'd go to college in the mornings, come back and work for them and deliver for 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon. And I kind of fell in love with the flow, the relationship that the pharmacist had with the patients, the trust that they had in the community, and everything that we all still love today about independent pharmacy is what made me fall in love with the concept of being a pharmacist. And it just stuck. And so I changed my major from pre-med to pre-pharmacy, and the rest is history. And as a fun aside, I think third week on the job, I was delivering out to a nursing home in a 1984 Ford Ranger that had automatic nothing. I mean, no power brakes, no power steering.
Cranking the window and all of it.
It was a little 4 on the floor, and I got out of that stupid truck that afternoon, 3 weeks into a job, knocked it out of gear. The parking brake didn't work, and I didn't realize this. I mean, I'd driven the truck for all of 3 weeks, and I'm gonna get my box of drugs to take into the nursing home. And as I close the door, I'm walking away into the nursing home, and I hear a car behind me. So I turn around to get out of the way, and it's the truck I just got out of rolling into the ravine behind the nursing home.
My God.
So. And the pharmacist didn't fire me. Bob Hodge, who's actually a Pioneer store in Paragould, Arkansas, is the one I have to thank for not getting rid of me after week 3.
Man, what was that conversation like with Bob? I
don't know that I can say those words on the podcast. I don't know if that's acceptable.
We're mostly fine. We're PG-13 most of the time. We're PG, but yeah.
Yeah, we do. You get one F-bomb, and then we got to move to TBMA.
Yeah. That's a tough call to make. That's a tough call.
Yeah, I had to call and just say, "Hey, Bob, your truck is in the ditch behind the nursing home. Can you help me?" And it was at the end of the day too, so it's like after a busy day, it's already been bad enough, and now he has to come and get his truck in a chain and attach it to the axle, and of course that terrible truck had 0 damage to it, and I drove it for another 1.5 years until he decided to finally invest in a new vehicle.
Well, that's so. Bob's like, well, good news, Scott. You get to keep the truck.
You can keep both your job and the truck. So let's keep this thing going.
Sounds like a solid win.
Oh, no doubt. Okay, so you have that experience. You go through pharmacy school. What led you into kind of going, you know what, I think me and Ann, or just you, I'm not sure what the journey was, but let's try owning a pharmacy and getting into kind of the entrepreneurial part of it.
Yeah, well, I've always been entrepreneurial, had that bend all my life, but really pharmacy school helped to enhance that. I worked for a great independent pharmacy in Sheridan, Arkansas while I was in pharmacy school called McCoy-Tygart Health Mart. Sparky Hedden and Phil Tygart owned that, by the way, relatively new Pioneer store.
They are.
Down there. Good folks, very high volume store. Another just really impactful group of people that helped me to understand the value of pharmacy to a community and the level of trust and care and importance that they bring to that world. And so continued to fall in love with that. And then after pharmacy school, I decided I have a huge political bend too, and I love politics and policy and regulatory type of activities. I was real involved in those student organizations in school that a lot of people just put on their resume that I was really kind of involved heavily with. And so after I got out of school, I went to Washington and did a residency within CPA in association management.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how I started my journey towards the law, towards association management. It's where I met Ann. She was actually a student working on a rotation one summer up in Washington. We met, helped her get a job at NCPA as their student affairs director for a period of time, and then we hit it off. And she basically said to me, "We need to start dating." And I said, "Yes, ma'am." So let's do it.
Smart.
So
Correct answer.
we dated long distance. I moved back to Arkansas. She came. We got married. All that good stuff.
Cool.
And so that led us ultimately into the independent pharmacy ownership. While I was working at the Arkansas Pharmacists Association as their chief operating officer and then chief executive officer, she was a faculty member at the College of Pharmacy at the University of Arkansas. And a friend of ours said, "Hey, I got an opportunity for us to buy a store. Do you want to do it?" And we thought at first that I might quit my job and run the store, and turned out that she was ready to quit hers and run the store. So I joke that she's the only person in the history of academia that got promoted one week and quit the next, which is true. Which is true.
Interestingly, Randy McDonough in Iowa has a very similar story. I was at I think PQA last year, and he was a professor, and he just got tenured, and I guess somebody told him he couldn't tell them how to run a pharmacy because he'd never run one. And so he kind of challenge accepted it, quit his job and bought a pharmacy. And now they're just, Randy's kind of a legend in the industry.
Randy's good people. Ironically, my wife is from Iowa. So I like that story even more.
Yeah. She actually taught too. You guys are so, I guess, political savvy is probably a bad way of putting it, but she actually, I think, taught an elective class there around.
Yeah, she developed a political advocacy class while she was on faculty at UAMS with her teaching partner Swanda Flowers. I don't know if you know Swanda or not. Swanda and her husband Seth Heldenbrand have been really integral in developing a program called POLA at the University of Arkansas, which is basically an ownership and leadership academy that they've developed, that the NCPA Foundation has helped to fund to try to develop the next generation of pharmacy owners. So, that entrepreneurial spirit isn't just, alive with me. I think it's really alive in the state of Arkansas in a really strong way, and that's been really fun to help to tap into over the years.
Did they have, Josh, you're the most recent grad. Did you have a political advocacy class or elective?
So it's
I feel like that's not something they do a lot.
So I went to the University of Texas at Austin, and they really thrive and live off of clinical residency, health systems.
See, I thought they fed off their ego, not actually their curriculum.
Well, also true.
Yes, Scott. I think you're right. It's weird, huh?
It's true. I was going to make a dig at Arkansas earlier, and then I was like, I'm going to...
It's already deteriorated. It's good.
It's okay. We had Barry Klein on a while back, and he's a Buckeye. And I did not call him and insult him after the Buckeyes got destroyed in the national championship.
No, you didn't. But sorry, Barry. Barry, we love you.
Also true. But yeah, my school was very, and it's in an urban... it's in Austin, so it's urban. It's just not really geared toward a lot of community practice. And that's one of the things I found, I didn't know much about Arkansas, and then I started working with Flip the Pharmacy, and, a lot of the Flip the Pharmacy engagement's really heavy in Arkansas. Megan at UAMS is running that cohort, and she's really super involved, and probably more involved than any other cohort that I deal with.
Yeah, Megan's terrific. I think one of the things that sets Arkansas apart from other states, from that entrepreneurial spirit, is just the strength of two things. Number one, the number of independents that we have in our state. We're still one of 4 or 5 states that have more independents than chains, which I think is pretty remarkable. Mm-hmm. And then number two, we just got a really strong state pharmacy association. And I'm pretty biased, having spent 12 years at that association and ultimately running it and leading legislative efforts for a number of years. But when you have strong relationships politically, when you've got a strong organization that kind of sets the tone and pushes the profession forward, it really matters to the people that are being brought up in the educational process. They see it, they expect it, they want to emulate it. And it's, to me, it's a cultural thing, not just a check the box thing with the pharmacy community in Arkansas. And you can't overstate how important that is.
Right. I think that's historically been a big gap in Texas. We have this whole like cavalier attitude. There's like 8 pharmacy associations in Texas.
I know. Yeah,
and
it's fairly
they
fragmented.
all kind of like,
they're working to not be
it's
so
certainly,
much,
it's,
but yes.
it's coalescing, but
there's some great people in Texas. Michael Wright is doing a good job down there. I know Deb Garza is trying hard down there.
Yeah.
They're good, well-intentioned people that are trying to work in a really big state. I think that's one of the luxuries we had in Arkansas is that we didn't have to work in a gigantic state that crossed multiple hundreds of miles to get from one end to the other.
Yeah, with a lot of different HQs of PBMs in the backyard either, which is a little bit of what they're dealing with too.
Also a challenge. Yeah. Sure.
So, okay, I hear all of that, and it sounds like, we're going to talk about Act 900 a little bit, which is a big part of what you spearheaded in what led to also Rutledge versus PCMA, which we all can have a toast to that. But what was the catalyst, for lack of a better word, that went, I think we're ready to do this from a legislative perspective or whatever, to even pass or think of the idea of Act 900?
Well, you have to realize that Act 900 was not the kind of the germ of the idea. It actually started 2 years earlier during the 2013 legislative session in Arkansas when the first maximum allowable cost bill passed in the state.
Right.
And it didn't have a really heavy enforcement mechanism. It was clunky. It was kind of hard to administer. And even though we could file appeals, there really wasn't any stick to force PBMs to do it. So Mark Riley, who was the CEO of the Pharmacist Association at the time, a guy I worked with for a number of years, great mentor and friend, owns East End Pharmacy, also a Pioneer store.
Yes.
I'm going to make this
just a
theme.
Pioneer
good,
plug.
man.
Is that okay?
Keep making. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
But anyway, so Mark helped to spearhead both the 13 and the 15 legislation. But after the 13 legislation, we sat down and tried to figure out, okay, this is great, except it's not working. So what can we do to make it work better? And so we sat down, we talked with attorneys in the AG's office, we talked with other folks in the pharmacy industry, we talked with our general counsel at the time, and sat down, and I actually found the original draft of this that I worked on from February of 2015, right before the Supreme Court stuff happened, just going back looking through my files. And we just put some enforcement mechanisms in place. We put some really objective criteria that the PBMs had to follow. And we thought, look, this will fix it if we can get this passed. And Mark and Deborah Wolf, who was our head lobbyist at the time, or she still is at the Pharmacist Association, myself, we had a great team of folks that helped to pass that bill in 2015, not to mention the grassroots efforts of the pharmacists from around the state.
Right.
And that was a really hotly contested bill.
Yes, it was.
The PBMs at the end, after it passed, flew in folks from all over the country to try to encourage the governor to veto the bill, which Governor Hutchins didn't do. And so it became the law, and all of a sudden, 4 months later, here come the lawsuits. And big thanks to Attorney General Rutledge. She was happy to take on defending a duly passed statute in the state of Arkansas, and took on a 5-year journey to defend that law, and took some extraordinary steps to get it to where we know it finally got to last month.
It was so much just grit and I don't know, perseverance, I guess, but just grit to stay with it and keep fighting. Because you're right. And I remember having that chamber, I'll call it, full of pharmacists. I think so many people remember that Facebook Live or wherever you saw it.
That was in 2018. That had to do with a different bill altogether.
Yeah, and that even had to do.
But I do think that goes to show you the political engagement, the fired up nature of pharmacists in Arkansas, the injustices that we all deal with in the PBM world. I mean, it has hit a boiling point multiple times in our state, and we've been very fortunate that the pharmacists rise up to be part of the solution. That to me is cool.
Yeah. No, I was just kind of, when you see the end of the journey, you don't really think about what it was at the beginning. Were you guys sitting around the table going, all right, these things are going to be what we want, and we know it's going to be the equivalent of walking in and just kicking a hornet's nest?
Yeah, you had to kind of know a little bit, right?
Every time you deal with legislation that affects the PBMs, you just know you're kicking a hornet's nest. So, I mean, that's just an expected, whether you're asking for something this little or something this big, it's a hornet's nest to them because, in an unregulated world where they have their as much cake as they want, they don't want to share a sliver of it. And so, they don't like anything.
And they're not even providing care. Sorry. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, they don't care. Did you just use the one F-bomb we can use this
No. I said they're not even providing care. Sorry.
Scott was so bummed. He was like, I was reserving that.
No,
that's still yours.
No,
it's still yours. It's still yours.
That disappoints me.
Yeah.
No. I mean, you're always kicking the hornet's nest, and so that gives you a little freedom, to be honest with you, to ask for what you think is right and what you think is fair. And that's one of the problems with pharmacy, but also the good things about pharmacy is we often start with what's fair, not start with something that's excessive. And so sometimes we end up with a little smaller slices of what we should get because we didn't start on an extreme, but. At the end of the day, we put in on pen to paper or keyboard, I should say, what we wanted out of that Act 900 bill. We clearly delineated what a wholesaler was and who qualified for the purposes of what the pricing was. We identified what were things that were fair that we wanted. For example, we didn't think it was fair that PBMs could pay pharmacies that they owned more than other network providers and use their leverage to disadvantage the pharmacies that are in their network. So we put that in there and made that illegal. We put in there that pharmacies could refuse to fill prescriptions if they were paid at the point of adjudication below their cost. Things that are common sense that put the onus on the PBM to do it right the first time, because nobody wants to file MAC appeals, right?
Oh.
But guess who has control over that? The price is set by the PBM. So if they don't want appeals, fine, just pay fair.
Yeah. I'm glad you said it because we're using Act 900 like everybody knows about it. I'm glad you kind of went over that. But the way I read it, I did more legal reading in the past 2 days than I ever had in my life. But the way I read
you mean you read a John Grisham book.
Right. I hear the Rainmaker's good.
Right. Yeah, I hear it is too. But it just really felt like you're right and fair because it seemed like the way it was written is you're asking for fundamental protections not to be paid at an unfair rate, and a process that provides transparency. Like kind of it.
At the end of the day, one of our great lobbying points on that bill is that the bill doesn't matter if the PBMs just pay fair. They have nothing to worry about if they are, playing fairly. And the minute that they're not, they've got something to worry about. So what we have since found is that provisions in that bill, particularly that paying themselves more than they pay other network providers, I mean, we have found mounds of evidence with that over the years. We did a press conference in 2018 where we uncovered a whole bunch of that stuff that, those are frankly violations that can be sanctioned at up to $10,000 per incident by the Attorney General's office. And we're hopeful that those investigations will continue.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you think about those kind of games where we won't name them, but we all know who they are? They pay their pharmacies less now too and show a huge loss on the retail side, but they also own the PBM, and now the loss that the retail incurs is the same as the independent, but the PBM is now rolling in cash.
Yeah, I mean, again, everything with the PBMs over the years has been this giant balloon, and when you squeeze it on one side, it pops out somewhere else.
That's a great way to put it.
We have been, as an industry, constantly chasing the newly popped out portion of the balloon, and I don't know how to solve that, Josh. I mean, I think we've got to be thinking not just about what we're fighting today, but what we might be fighting down the road. And I do think some foresight is something as an industry we don't do very well. We're always concerned about the problems of today, not necessarily the problems of tomorrow. And I think we've got to be more ambitious about thinking ahead.
Right.
It's a good soundbite.
Yeah. And I think like I'm going to say something here and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I don't have a problem with a health insurance owning a PBM. I have a huge problem with a PBM owning a pharmacy. So if I could like take my magic wand, just make it illegal for a PBM to own a pharmacy. The incentives are too perverse to do it the wrong way.
Yeah, the way I think about it, I always have thought for years about PBMs as credit cards because at their core, they do the same thing. They process electronic claims associated with dollars. And from a fundamental fairness perspective, can you imagine if Visa got the data from every claims transaction at Dillard's so they could refer you down the street to the Visa department store?
Right.
I mean, it's just
such a great way to put it. I haven't heard that yet. It's
way better than my idea.
But it's what it is.
That's exactly what it is. I have a question for you because I was really thinking last night at a different angle at some of this. And I was really kind of like, I'm not going to say I was or not, but we might have done some cartwheels when we saw the Supreme Court ruling. We might have done some tumbling down the hallway. What was your reaction? Where were you at when you found out? I'm sure your phone was blowing up. That was an interesting tidbit I thought of last night. I was like, I wonder what he was doing.
It's a great question and a good story. Let me first of all by saying this. After I left the Pharmacist Association to go do my current deal, which is I'm a partner in a government relations company called Impact Management Group. I do contract lobby work for a lot of groups, a lot of industries. We still own the pharmacy and love doing that. And I hope we'll talk about the COVID stuff here in a little bit. But after I left, the guy that I hired as my number 2, John Vinson, took over and has just done a fantastic job. And John and his team really, carried the torch to continue the PR and continue the outreach to get that case to the Supreme Court and all the good stuff that followed with that. So I just want to make sure I give them a shout out for all the good work that they've done. So what did I do that day? I don't remember where I was on December 10th, 2020. No, of course I do, right? That's a sentinel date now for the rest of my life. I had planned on taking that day off. And I'd planned on taking that day off because me and a good friend of mine had been invited to play a golf course that I had never played before. It was a 72-degree day in December in Little Rock, Arkansas, and it was beautiful. It was sunny. And I was just looking forward to the night before, sleeping in a little bit, getting up and putting my golf clothes on and going and hitting the links. And that night, I got a call from John Vinson saying, "Hey, there's going to be the first decisions of the term issued tomorrow. We don't know if it's going to be ours. It might be ours. Probably not going to be ours. Just wanted you to be on kind of notice." And so I'm like, "Great, that's terrific." And so then I talked to Rob Smith, who's an attorney at Catton, which is a firm that we used at the Pharmacist Association. And you may have met Rob, I don't know, but he and his partner Howard from Catton just did Howard Rubin, Rob Smith and Howard Rubin did just a wonderful job helping us with amicus briefs and advising us through that 5-year process. And Rob's like, "Hey, did you hear there's going to be the first decisions of the term are coming down tomorrow? I'm not sure if it's going to be ours." So we kind of went through that same thing. And Rob's like, I don't think it's going to be ours, but it might be. So I got up in the morning, took a shower, got my golf clothes on, was getting ready to go to the golf course and get a phone call. And I'm like, "Hello?" And they're like, "It's the decision's back. It's 8-0." And I'm like, "Ah, damn, we lost 8-0." And they're like, "No, we won 8-0." And I'm like, "Holy crap, I need to get a copy of the opinion so I can start reading it." So the opinion came in quick. The text started. The phone call started.
Right.
I texted Senator Ron Caldwell, who's a dear friend and was the Senate sponsor, and Representative Michelle Gray, who's a dear friend, and the House sponsor, and other legislative folks that helped to champion along the way, Senator Jason Rapert, just litany of people. And it just became this digital virtual celebration, kind of doing those little happy dances, kind of like dancing like Elaine on Seinfeld, terribly, but but just happy dances. And then all of a sudden it was like, "Oh crap, I got to get to the golf course because my tee time's coming up." And so I go and pick up my buddy. I'm like euphoric over the Supreme Court stuff.
You have to be.
One of our congressman's office called me and said, "Hey, we need some help drafting a statement." So I worked with them while I was trying to get to the golf course. And I'm like, "Hey, I've got to go because I'm getting close to the golf course. But here's the last little bit of the statement thing that I think would be helpful." And then I played golf, and my wife was with me for the round of golf just to kind of to chill that day. And my buddy was with me, and we played golf and we drank beer and we had a glorious, glorious December 10th, 2020.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty solid. And the cool part about that is you're kind of this part of this cohort now that like you're going to get a drink at every bar where there's a bunch of independent pharmacists for the rest of your life.
I don't know about that.
You should just put like, I did Act 900.
Right.
Like,
well, look, if anybody's listening, Kettle One is perfectly fine.
Kettle One is perfectly.
And also shout out to Ron Fitzwater in Missouri because he's also a Kettle One aficionado.
Noted.
So Mark and I were talking last night, and like one of the things that we thought was most unintentionally funny part of the PCMA decision was the PCMA's curt response.
Yeah.
What did you read into that?
I mean, their response is their typical response, which is obfuscate from any responsibility that they have and blame other people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, their playbook is their playbook, which is don't look at us, look at them.
Yeah.
They are, in Texas now, where you guys are probably filming this, they are putting up billboards blaming independent pharmacies for the high cost of drugs, which is ludicrous because guess what? Who sets the price of drugs? PBMs.
Right.
So, I mean, it's no more simpler than that. They're trying to throw PSAOs under the bus right now. You know why? Because there's something somebody doesn't know much about. So look at them.
Yeah, this is an obscure group. Yeah.
Here's an acronym that we don't even really know what it does.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, their whole model is it's kind of like being a 6-year-old who gets in trouble. What does a 6-year-old do when they get in trouble? They blame everybody but the person who caused the problem.
Right.
And all we need to do is look at PBMs as 6-year-olds who won't accept responsibility.
Yeah, no doubt. And I guess that maybe a silver lining in some of that you look at that billboard and you're like, you're a group that represents like, I'm thinking 5 or 6 of the Fortune 15 companies. Like it doesn't make any sense what they're doing.
I saw it, and I can't remember who was circulating it, but one of the big PBMs was putting out a deal, railing against independent pharmacies, saying that everybody knows that independent pharmacies have great profit margins and they make a ton of money. And I was like, where are those guys at?
I mean, look, I think the way that they've structured effective rate contracts over the last number of years, I mean, they've effectively ensured that some pharmacies are successful, and they've effectively put some pharmacies out of business. And they know that. And I think they've been strategic about that because effective rate contracts on their face are seemingly reasonable until you realize that not every pharmacy has the same payer mix. Not every pharmacy has the same product mix. Not every pharmacy has the same prescriber base. And when you start figuring all of those variables out, it creates distinct winners and it creates distinct losers. And it's not an equitable payment system. And at the end of the day, they don't care. It doesn't matter how big your parent company is. What really matters is the amount of leverage that we've allowed the Optums and CVS Caremarks and Express Scripts / Cigna now, whatever we want to call them. They've got the lives, and because they've got the lives, they have controlled the entire sector. And unless we, from a policy perspective, get a handle on that, this is going to be, still a challenging road ahead. We just have some new paths ahead of us because of Rutledge v. PCMA.
On that topic, the opinion comes out. It's a lot of it's based on Travelers. Travelers was another kind of in this same boat, but around healthcare services, I think, right? Kind of you can't determine what services you have to offer, but you can determine how the payment methodology underneath them works, right?
Yeah, you can't interfere with core matters of plan administration, but you certainly can affect rate, which is essentially what Travelers was years and years ago in the state of New York. And it's amazing to me that the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals can't read a U.S. Supreme Court case and understand what precedent is. But you know what? They didn't, and the U.S. Supreme Court did the right thing and granted certiorari and used Travelers as the fundamental basis to overturn a bad decision in the 8th Circuit.
I'm going to jump in real quick and be super impressed with your you did do some legal reading.
Dude, I'm telling you, man.
I was thinking the same thing. I was waiting.
I was all over that.
Like, I was just like, well, I'm going to go home now.
It's like that part. I can't remember what movie, but Will Ferrell like blacks out and starts saying
Old School in the debate with
right.
James Carville.
Right.
You just blacked out and you're like, well, in USC 13.042.
Right. I just came back. All right. I'm back. But
what did I say?
I like the Old School reference, by the way. That's
such a good movie. It kind of narrows, doesn't it? Effectively narrow the reach of ERISA, not to get too legal and bore people, but like not that being legal is boring, Scott. But
I don't think it's boring at all.
But does it kind of narrow the scope of what ERISA, I guess, it effectively is and affects?
Without a doubt. I mean, look, I think you have to go back for a second and think about ERISA. You know, ERISA stands for the Employee Retirement Income Securities Act. It was passed in 1974. I'm going to get some more some legal nerd stuff in here.
It's good. You're good. No, I like it.
And so what it was initially designed to do was to help protect the alienability of your retirement plan, these pension plans that people had spent their careers working at a railroad or at a factory, and to protect those from essentially being treated differently in different states because of different rules of Michigan versus Pennsylvania, or whatever. So it created some uniform national standards as it pertained to essentially pension benefits. But benefits have evolved over the years, where now people go to work not just for a pension, but for health insurance and for long-term disability insurance and all this other mess. And so through the years, court decisions have essentially helped to lump in all other benefits, not just the retirement benefits, because remember, it's the employee income or employee retirement income. It's not the employee health care income.
Healthcare Company Protection Act.
Healthcare has just been thrown in there over the years. And so, which has been unfortunate, because in 1974, nobody even thought of what a PBM was. I mean, the first one existed in the 60s, but we didn't have any broad scale PBM usage into the 80s. So from a pure statutory interpretation perspective, it's absurd to think that PBMs were intended by congressional intent to be caught by ERISA, because they just weren't a factor then. It was just absurd to even think that. So what we've been fighting against over the years is people not understanding what PBMs are, folks not really interpreting statutes like they need to interpret statutes, and having to almost fight backwards instead of fight forward. And I think that the Rutledge case is a big step in the right direction to tell the states, hey, you know what? You do have the ability to set pricing structure for plans, because pricing is not a central matter of plan administration. I mean, it's as simple as that. But ERISA is complicated, and it's going to take Congress to make bigger scale changes. And who knows if they have the guts to do that over the next 2 to 10 years? Who knows? But we got a big win this last month, and I'm excited about that.
Could it lead into, and this could be like, to me, Scott and the Arkansas team kicking the door open to this a little bit, could it also lend itself to states wanting to regulate surprise billing on the health plan side, where you go out of network and you get hit with this god awful large $10,000 bill as a patient? Does it kind of open the door to even kind of start from a regulatory body perspective for states to start protecting patients against that?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, this is a completely different topic, but states are already stepping into the surprise medical billing world. California has stepped into that world. Texas has stepped into that world. New York has stepped into that world. And Congress actually stepped into the surprise medical billing world in this last coronavirus relief package to help protect patients from those large out-of-network bills when they see a provider who's not covered. And they've established a new kind of arbitration style method of the payers and the providers to come together when they have disputes over rates. So that's actually a part of what just happened in the new coronavirus relief package in Congress. So again, topic for another day. I can't quote you the section of federal code, Josh, that comes from, but yes, I think states are going to take a much more active role in regulating healthcare. Because they are the laboratories of innovation, and they are going to continue to innovate.
Yeah, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's weird, like we deal with a lot of different state regulatory issues on the pharmacy management side, and the hope is that states make good and similar decisions. And then you kind of run into, there's 50 different ways to do Medicaid and other things like that. So you start kind of running into I think it'll help for a while, and then it'll get super convoluted. And unless there's some kind of national or CMS response, it's just going to be untenable, which is interesting. I'm okay with the PBM world being untenable.
Well, I mean, I would ask, will it be?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there are 50 different ways to practice pharmacy right now, and I don't think any of us would tell you that we want a uniform national pharmacy standard. I want Texas to be able to decide how Texas pharmacists can practice and what the top of the license looks like there. And I want Colorado and Arkansas and Michigan to be able to do the same thing as it comes to physicians or nurses, and we have differences in those professions. So why is it not okay to have differences in healthcare too, in health insurance too? I mean, I just think it's silly to treat essentially like items differently.
Right. All right. So we've spent majority of our time on all of that. We
on the law.
We really could. I could probably do another 30 minutes because I got questions about like what your thoughts are on the NCPA DIR lawsuit. And but let's kind of go back into the pharmacy and what you guys are doing at Kavanaugh.
And later, Mark will request free legal advice about some other pending stuff.
Right. I have a few pending issues, Scott. I will talk about. But
Zero legal advice. All opinion. All opinion.
Thank you for watching the Catalyst Podcast. This has been part 1 of our episode with Scott Pace. Tune in next week as the guys discuss COVID-19 testing and vaccinations. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and/or following us. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts to help us reach more amazing pharmacy people like you. Follow Pioneer RX on your preferred social media platform for the latest up-to-date pharmacy news and content.